Members, we have a quorum, and this is the appointed time. I call to order the meeting of the subcommittee on 4 pieces of subsidiary legislation relating to regulation of ride-hailing services. First item, election of deputy chairman. The Secretariat has issued a notice notifying members that by the close of the nomination period, only one valid nomination has been received for deputy chairmanship, and that's Mr. Adrian Ho. He is nominated by Mr. Jiming and seconded by other members. According to paragraph 8D of the Annex 4 to the rules of the House Rules, if a valid nomination for deputy chairmanship is received, members may discuss whether there is a need to elect a deputy chairman. Now, do members think we need a deputy chairman? Yes, and we only have one valid nomination. That's Mr. Adrian Ho. I announce that Mr. Adrian Ho elected as the deputy chairman of the subcommittee. A round of applause, please. Next meeting with the administration. The government officials are in their seats. Now, remind members that according to Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedure, if you have direct or indirect pecuniary interest concerning the matters we are discussing today, please disclose the nature of such interest before you speak. Also consult members' views. That's the question we ask every time. Do we need to conduct public consultation? If so, we have to decide, will we invite public submission by writing, or should we hold a public hearing? I hear written submission. Are there any objections? Actually, we have already received a number of submissions from the public. That is decided. The Secretariat will publish a notice and also invite public submission through the 18 district councils. So the government officials are here. We will now invite members who would like to speak to press the button. So we invite Ms. Mabel Chan, Secretary for Transport and Logistics, to walk us through the 4 pieces of subsidiary legislation. Good morning. Just last week, the government has published notices in the Gazette concerning 4 pieces of subsidiary legislation concerning ride-hailing services. That's about the details of the regulatory regime of ride-hailing services. So I thank the LegCo as well as the Secretariat for your support so that we can convene the first meeting to scrutinize the legislation swiftly. In last October, the Road Traffic Amendment Ride-Hailing Service Bill 2025 was passed by the LegCo to establish a legal framework for the regulation of ride-hailing services. The Secretary for Transport and Logistics and the Commissioner for Transport were empowered to establish subsidiary legislation to regulate ride-hailing services. That includes the 4 pieces of subsidiary legislation today. One is a brand new regulation for regulatory details for vehicle and driver's permits. The other one is the Road Traffic Driving Licenses Amendment Regulation 2026 to introduce a combined driving test for driving taxis and ride-hailing vehicles. The third is a Gazette notice to specify the limit on the number of ride-hailing vehicle permits. The final one is the Commencement notice to prescribe the commencement dates of the various provisions of the bill passed last year. Now, we have been explaining the regulatory regime to members. Now, ride-hailing service is an international trend, and this term of the government is determined to establish a clear legal framework and provisions for the ride-hailing service to end the debate, which has lasted more than 10 years. Now, over the past several months, we have listened to members of the public's views. We have considered the factors, including the local ecosystem of public transport, as well as the development of the point-to-point service industry. Now, we propose limiting the number of vehicle permits for online ride-hailing services at 10,000 as a prudent measure. Now, this is a brand new measure. After introducing the regulatory regime, the demand of passengers for online hail vehicles, as well as the supply, will be subject to changes. To allow the government to understand the operational situation as well as the compliance of the platforms, the Transport Department will establish an electronic channel as well as an information system to collect the operational data from platforms, which will be connected to the platform systems. The platforms, on the other hand, are required to keep proper records of operational data and also to provide the records on the request of the Commissioner for Transport. These data will help the government to learn about the actual operational situation of the platform, to allow the government to conduct dynamic assessments of market developments through these data as well as data collected through other channels. This will allow the government to conduct timely review on whether to adjust the number of online ride-hailing vehicle permits. Now, we have consulted the panel on transport last month. Members were supportive to adopt the principle of overall control on the number of ride-hailing vehicles. Valuable views were submitted. Many members agreed with the overall control and dynamic assessment principle. Members considered that the government should base the decision on supply and demand as well as the actual operation situation to flexibly adjust the number of ride-hailing vehicles. Now, like LegCo members, the government attaches importance to data security. As a result, the subsidiary legislation specifies that platforms must keep the personal data in their service and ensure that the data are submitted to the Transport Department through the required channel. The provisions of the personal data privacy ordinance must be complied with to ensure that the data collected are only for operational use. Without consent of the individual in question, the data cannot be used for other purposes or transmitted to other parties. Concerning implementation timetable, subject to the completion of the negative vetting period, most of the provisions will come into effect on the 3rd of August this year, promptly, so that we can proceed with the following work. Now, there are three major areas. First of all, we plan to start sending invitation to interested platform companies to apply for ride-hailing service licenses in the 3rd quarter this year. And then we will launch the combined driving tests for taxis and ride-hailing vehicles so that interested drivers can apply for completion of the written test and also to complete the pre-service course. Now, in the 4th quarter this year, we will start inviting vehicle and drivers permits applications, and then we will issue the permits for vehicles and drivers gradually. Now, after the completion of these 3 stages of work, we expect that we can start issuing ride-hailing service licenses to platforms as early as the end of November this year, so that the licensed platforms can commence their preparatory work. That includes recruiting owner-drivers who hold both the vehicle permits and driving permits to register with the platform. Following that, passengers can enjoy online ride-hailing services provided by vehicles and drivers with permits. At the same time, the Transport Department will immediately start monitoring the preparatory work and operational activities of the platforms, and will require the platforms to provide operational data to prove that they have complied with the requirements. The platforms will be given 6 months' time to prepare as well as recruit drivers. Now that's a sufficient period because we expect a large number of platforms will apply for a license and we will have to vet their application. So within 9 months, all platforms must complete preparation of their systems and recruitment of compliant owners drivers. Now on the 22nd of August 2027, all the provisions will come into effect. By then, all online ride-hailing service platforms will have to be licensed and in compliance of all the requirements, including fully conducting due diligence to ensure that all vehicles and drivers providing services through them hold permits and are compliant, and also the arrangements to strengthen the suspension of the vehicle license concern and the impoundment of vehicles. That is, the enhanced punishment will also come into effect on the same date. Now, with the two-pronged approach, we can further strengthen the government's law enforcement as well as deterrent effect on illegal carriage of passengers for reward, achieving a mutually reinforcing effect. But the vision is to provide a safer and more diverse ride-hailing ecosystem for both drivers and passengers to ensure healthy and sustainable growth of the overall industry. Enhancing competitiveness of the trade is very important. We have received the aspirations from members of the public concerning the taxi trade as well as ride-hailing industry. Now, the healthy growth of the trade heavily relies upon its stakeholders. So there will be a number of additional measures to attract more new blood to join the point-to-point transport service industry, to inject vitality into the industry, make it younger, and more importantly, allowing healthy growth in terms of safety and efficiency. Now, after the completion of the negative vetting period, we will start our preparatory work. We will be pragmatic and based on the data, we will monitor the operational situation after the regulatory regime is put in place. That concludes my introduction. We will cooperate fully with the subcommittee. I and my team, as well as the Transport Department's colleagues, are here to answer members' questions. We welcome members to give us your invaluable views so that we can enhance our regulatory regime. Thank you so much. Thank you, Secretary.
Now is the time for members to put questions. I'll read out the names of the members who have pressed their button. Chao Xiu-chung, Thomas Cho, Chris Ip, Chan Pui-leung, Duncan Chiu, Chen Xiu-hong, Adrian Ho, Jimmy Ng, Chong Ho-feng, Lothar Lam, Eric Yim, Jonathan Lampert, Lim Wai Kong, and then Chen Han Pan. 4 minutes, including question and answer. Mr. Chao Xiu-chung. Thank you, Chairman. I support the regulatory framework over ride-hailing service. I have a few questions. First, the government said that one of the purpose of regulating ride-hailing service is that we want to enhance people's experience on point-to-point transport services. I support the regulation of ride-hailing service. My question is this. As we want to enhance people's experience using point-to-point transport service, we need to make sure that the waiting time is short enough. After regulation, will the fare of online ride-hailing service go up substantially? I wonder if the government have such information. That is, after the regulation come into effect, what will the fare of point-to-point transport service be in the future? How does it compare to taxi fares? And what about the waiting time? Will it be kept at a reasonable level after regulation? If it's too long, then we may have to make adjustment. I wonder if the government has given consideration to these areas. Second, on licensing. I know that the government need to maintain an overall control over the number of permits. We have to have regards to the capacity of ride-hailing service. We need to have regards to the interest of the taxi industry and the loading of our roads. If the government issues license to platforms that don't have that many drivers or active drivers, then the capacity that they offer may be limited. I wonder if the government will reach out to some platform companies asking them to invite active drivers to come on board when the regulation come into operation. Will the government issue licenses to or permits to drivers who are active? Third, I think that dynamic adjustment is very important. If the waiting time is substantially lengthened or the fare shot up extensively after the regulation, I think that the government need to make adjustment speedily. Maybe in a few months after the regulation come into operation, the government need to issue many more licenses to ensure the experience of the people. Secretary, 3 questions. Please turn on her microphone. Thank you, Mr. Chow, for the 3 questions. Our purpose of regulating ride-hailing service is to maintain people's experience using point-to-point transport service. We don't want people to have difficulties securing a ride after the regulation come into effect. The experience has to do with waiting time and the fares. Currently, some platform companies operate illegally. The government does not have legal basis to collect the relevant data, as mentioned by Mr. Chow. We hope that when the subsidiary legislation come into operation, we can ask platform companies to provide relevant operational data. The requirement is set out in the licensing conditions. The data will include a waiting time of the passengers, the amount of, the time the drivers is online, and the feedback of drivers and passengers. These data will be the basis for analysis. The Transport Department in the 3rd quarter this year will start a baseline investigation to assess the current situation so that we can make a comparison in the future. Second, when we assess the drivers and platforms in the future, in the legislation, we do have some flexibility. We may adopt a lot drawing approach, or we may give priority to drivers or vehicles with certain characteristics. For drivers or vehicles, the commissioner has the power to accord priority to those with specific features. Third, on dynamic assessment, I understand that members want us to do that. When we have sufficient data, we can make staged analysis so that we can respond to the market speedily and respond to the people's need more flexibly. Mr. Thomas Cho. So, thank you. First of all, I support the subsidiary legislation and the amendment to the ordinances. After reading the papers, I have a few points to make. First, On the requirement on the age of vehicles, it is said that the cars must be less than 12 years old at the time of application. I understand that the age of a drivers have to do with the comfort level of the passengers and road safety. I wonder if the requirement is the same for taxis. If we don't have an age requirement for taxis, then should we set one? Second, on the requirement for drivers, health. For taxi drivers, we see on the news that some of them are older, and because of that, traffic accidents happened. I wonder if the administration will put in place such a requirement for drivers for ride-hailing service. In paragraph 13 of the paper, the government said that they have conducted some market research, and it is said that around 60 to 70% of the drivers work fewer than 20 hours per week. They work on a part-time basis. So a majority of the ride-hailing vehicle drivers are currently providing service on a part-time basis. In paragraph 14, you said that after introducing the regulation, you will make an assumption that every driver will work 6 hours a day. In other words, they work some 30-odd hours a week. You ask the vehicles to renew their permits, and there is KPIs for vehicles. If you make an assumption, then it means that you are asking part-time drivers to go full-time. Will that affect the entire ecosystem? Because most drivers register with the platforms because they can work part-time. If you ask them to turn into full-time drivers, they may not be willing to continue to provide their service. You talked about dynamic analysis. I hope that they will actually achieve such a goal, and I hope that they will give us a more concrete timetable. Maybe 6 months or 3 months after the implementation of the regulation, the government will submit a report to us or make adjustment based on their dynamic assessment, timely adjustment approach. Secretary, thank you. On the question about the age of the vehicles, we want to strike a balance between safety and service quality. And we also have to take into account the supply of ride-hailing vehicles. For taxis, we don't have restrictions on the age, but for taxi fleets, we do have some regulations. We hope that taxi fleets will only engage taxis of 3 years or less. On the health conditions of drivers, for commercial vehicle drivers, they will have to go through annual body checkup. We are reviewing our existing legislation. We hope to enhance our regulations and restrictions. Within this year, in the first half of this year, we'll come back to the panel on transport to make a proposal. Any new regulations on commercial vehicle drivers will report to the LegCo. Third, Mr. So made a very good point. Most of the ride-hailing drivers are part-timers. The turnover is rather high. We've looked at the time when these drivers are online. The government cares very much about this data. After the platforms have obtained the license and permits, we ask them to submit the relevant data to us, including the number of hours that the drivers work, so that we can have a better grasp of the situation. We want to maintain the part-time nature of some of the drivers, because this kind of flexibility and turnover can increase the capacity at certain peak hours. Fourth, we believe, in November this year, we're going to issue permits for licenses, and the licensing conditions will be invoked, and by then the platforms will have to submit data to the Transport Department. Hopefully after that we can make analysis based on those figures and data. After the regulation comes into full operation, we will have a comprehensive set of data so that we can make a dynamic assessment. Thank you. Mr. Chris Yip. Thank you, Chairman. Secretary, I believe that everyone is looking forward to this ride-hailing service legislation. The government said that the number of vehicles permits will be kept at $10,000. I support it. I have two questions. On the point about a dynamic assessment, the Secretary said that they rely on the data submitted by the platform to make analysis. Will the government collect data from tourists? Take myself as an example. When I travel to other places because of language barriers, I rely on online ride-hailing service. So I think that the government should collect data from, for example, business travelers. We need to know how many times business travelers make use of online ride-hailing service in a day, so that we can assess the service dynamically. How often will the assessment be made? Every 1 month or 2 months? We need to collect data on the waiting time and the fares. This is important. I hope that the government will consider my suggestion. And I hope that the government will make adjustment to the number of vehicle permits frequently. According to CAF 374B, the driving test, it seems that the online ride-hailing service drivers take the same test as that of taxi, but those passing the test cannot drive taxis. Can we allow ride-hailing drivers take courses that is required for taxi drivers so that they can drive taxis as well? I believe that according to the government, they define taxi drivers as full-timers, but most ride-hailing drivers are part-timers. The ultimate goal is that we want to provide point-to-point transport service to the people and travelers. If we allow ride-hailing drivers to also take tests for taxi drivers, then we can inject new blood to the trade. Thank you. Secretary, thank you. On data collection, as I said, in the subsidiary legislation and licensing conditions, we will ask the platforms to provide detailed data and information. That's because we want to make a complete analysis. We are going to collect data from via different channels. Many overseas and mainland travelers come to Hong Kong. The number of inbound travelers is on the rise. You gave us a very great suggestion. The Transport Department will engage a third-party company to conduct such market analysis and investigation so that we can make analysis or assessment more dynamically. I will ask the Commissioner for Transport to reply to your second question.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Member, for the question. Now, we do have a taxi written test at present. Now, through this opportunity, we are enhancing the entire point-to-point passenger transport service industry. So we will launch a combined test for driving taxis and ride-hailing vehicles in replacement of the taxi written exam. Now, to become a taxi driver, after taking the combined test, you should take the pre-service course for taxi drivers. For ride-hailing drivers, you should take the pre-service course for ride-hailing drivers. So the combined test is the common exam for both taxi and ride-hailing drivers. Now, in addition, in-service taxi drivers can directly apply for ride-hailing driver permits. The overall objective is to enhance the supply of drivers for the point-to-point service industry. Now, for taxi industry, there is also the aging problem, and the measure can address that. Now, I think the member's question is whether you can combine the driving test for both. May I supplement, Chairman? Now, our principle is fully aligned with Mr. Chris Ip's. Through the combined written test, we can enhance the arrangement. Now, concerning the pre-service courses, now depending on whether the candidate would like to become a taxi driver or a ride-hailing driver, there will be some distinct contents in the pre-service courses. Mr. Chen Pulang, thank you. And concerning the number of 10,000 vehicle permits to be issued. Now, this number is based on the assumption that each driver will drive for 6 hours each day and complete 2 trips per hour. That's actually the upper limit or the higher limit of the number of working hours of ride-hailing drivers. But obviously, the actual drivers who are awarded with permits will not work according to this assumption. So the capacity in reality will be different from your expectation. So if the gap is really huge, is there a contingency plan to fill the gap immediately? Second question, the paper did not mention the insurance arrangement for ride-hailing vehicles. Now, the government will collect operational data from the platforms. So can part of the operational data be shared with the insurance companies so as to come up with a more reasonable premium level? Now, if a vehicle engaging in 2 different types of operations may require 2 separate premium insurance policies borne by 2 insurers. So there may be a gap in the coverage of insurance policies. So can the government help the insurers prepare? Shouldn't you make a declaration of interest, Mr. Chen? Yes, I work in a insurance company. Thank you, Mr. Chan, for your questions. The questions are in relation to dynamic assessments. Now, we have shared some data given to us by online ride-hailing platform concerning the active hours of drivers at present. Now, that's an assumption. We have been working on the assumption to come up with the limits of 10,000 vehicle permits. That's a start, and that's a prudent approach. In the future, we will dynamically review and adjust the number of vehicle permits. So once the system begins, we will be able to collect data from the operating platforms continuously through the Transport Department's e-channel. So that's concerning the number of workers, then the duration of hours that it provides service per day, and also the waiting time of passengers. We will be able to collect these data and conduct a dynamic review. We will be prudent, and we will holistically consider all factors. On the second question about insurance. Now, we have heard many stakeholders reminding us of the importance of insurance. Now, one suggestion is that drivers can be offered reasonable insurance products on top of the existing insurance plan, which will also cover ride-hailing services provided by them. And there are also suggestions that the platform should procure insurance policies for all drivers on the platform. So we will consider these suggestions. The main objective is to ensure passenger safety. Now, bear in mind that all ride-hailing vehicles are private cars. They may be registered with more than one platform. So we have to make sure that there is no gap or gray area between different insurance policies. So we'll be communicating with the insurer's authority. Now, they incline to extend the existing coverage of the vehicle to cover ride-hailing services. That would be a clearer and simpler approach, and we would have better control and supervision over the number of service hours provided by each vehicle. But we will continue to listen to other views. We will also ensure that the additional fee, the additional premium is reasonable, which will not become an obstacle for newcomers. Mr. Duncan Chiu, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm not a panel member, but the innovation technology sector is very concerned about this policy. Now, as mentioned by the Secretary, part of the measures may be against the principle of shared economy. Now, however, if you look at the past decade, without any regulation, the food delivery economy as well as shared bicycle economy have seen some confusion. So the INT sector supports the legislations. So members have asked questions about the dynamic assessment approach. Now, many of the drivers are gig economy workers. So we understand that we have to start with a smaller number, that's 10,000. Now, if the working hours are too long, then many gig economy workers would leave the trade. And it's not easy to increase the supply of drivers at a moment's notice. So can we have a reserve list for drivers? So when you need more drivers, those drivers on the reserve list can immediately step up. Now, in terms of transitional plan, taxi fleet, can we make some adjustments for the taxi fleet to fill the gap in the transitional period? And third question, there are concerns that in the initial period of the regulatory regime, there may be a surge in the number of vehicles providing illegal hire services. So we have to step up on law enforcement as well. Secretary, thank you. Now, in sending invitations to platforms and drivers, I'm sure that the Transport Department will be prepared in terms of the administrative contingency plans. Now, concerning taxi fleets, they have their own ride-hailing apps. And besides, there is a platform company and actually an e-payment platform which provide ride-hailing service for all 5 taxi fleets. And altogether, there are 8,000 taxis offering ride-hailing services through that platform. And that platform is well known to the public. So through the platform, I think passengers can make use of taxi fleet services and also called ride-hailing vehicles. So with the launch of the regulatory regime and the licensing systems, we will encourage ride-hailing platforms to invite taxis, whether they are taxi fleet taxis or not, to provide service through their platform. With that, we can ensure that there is a coexistence as well as complementary existence between the two trades. Now, on vehicles providing illegal hire services, now the police has been enforcing the law proactively. Now, in 2025, vehicles impounded for this offense as well as drivers arrested, the number has increased. There were 117 vehicles impounded for that offense. Now, in the subsidiary legislation, we have also set out punishment for for illegal provision of hire. Now, the driving license will be disqualified for 12 months to 3 years. Now, when the provision comes into effect on the 3rd of August, this will come into effect. Now, in the future, the platform will also have to comply its due diligence duty in full. So in terms of impoundment of vehicle, disqualification of driving license, as well as the platform's due diligence compliance, will be able to crack down on these offenses.
Mr. Chan Xiuhong. Thank you, Chairman. Since the ordinance regulating ride-hailing service came into operation last year, members of the public have been looking forward to the details of the regulatory framework. Thanks to the effort of the Secretary and her team, we now have the proposals for the 4 pieces of subsidiary legislation. There are 4 principles under the regulatory regime, that is complementary coexistence, positive competition, overall control, dynamic assessment. But we have to look at the details of the regulatory regime. Everyone is concerned about the vehicle cap of 10,000. It's obviously not enough. The Secretary said that they wanted to start with the 10,000 vehicle permit cap so that they can launch the regime in a more progressive manner. I agree with that. Once the permits have been issued, it's difficult for us to take them back. The permit will be valid for at least 1 year. If we issue too many permits, then it may overload our traffic network. The key lies with the dynamic assessment and timely adjustment mechanism. I wonder if the mechanism will allow the government to make adjustment in a very timely manner. The key also lies with whether the government can collect data in real time, say, for example, on a customer or passenger experience, the fares, and the waiting time. The government did not specify how often they are going to review the number of vehicle permits issued. Can the Secretary tell us what their line of thinking is? After the regulatory regime is implemented, will the government issue guidelines very soon for the platform or drivers? Second, this is a question put by some other members already. In August next year, the regulatory regime will come into full operation. But from now until August next year, there will be legal and illegal drivers and platforms existing concurrently. The government said that they will step up enforcement efforts, but over the past 11 years, we are seeing many drivers carrying passengers for reward illegally. If we are going to see compliant and non-compliant drivers on the market, then that may not be fair. I wonder if the government will step up enforcement, or are they going to turn a blind eye to those that have not obtained a license before August next year? These are my two questions. Secretary. Thank you for 2 questions. I thank him for supporting us all along, and I thank him for his understanding. We want to adopt a dynamic assessment and overall control principles. The policy intent and the goal are very important. Very often, we want to adhere to the goal of our policy. We propose a 10,000 cap for vehicle permits because we want to strike a balance on different areas. All of the areas are equally important. First, we want to safeguard people's experience. Second, we have to have regards to the overall economy and development of society. Third, capacity of our roads. Fourth, our public transport system. Some people may think that the cap of 10,000 is too many. Some think the number of vehicle permits to be issued are too few. Overall speaking, we want to, first of all, collect data from the platforms on, say, for example, the number of drivers, the time that they're online, so on and so forth. As Mr. So said, many ride-hailing vehicle drivers work on a part-time basis. Some of them have a full-time job, and many of them work only during holidays and weekends. We are of the view that we need to adopt a data-based approach before we make any adjustment. We undertake that we will not slow down in any way. Upon scrutiny of the LegCo on our subsidiary legislation, after the regulatory regime come into operation, we will formulate a timetable. In the meantime, we're going to collect useful data from the market, from tourists, visitors, members of the public. At the same time, platform companies will connect their systems to the one established by the Transport Department. With the data, we will be able to make phased analysis. We are not going to be caught off guard because we are going to receive data from the platform regularly. We have given much thought and careful consideration to the cap on the vehicle permits that we have decided on. We want to take a more cautious approach as we're just starting out. We hope that the trade will be able to operate in a fair and impartial environment. Second, on enforcement. Through amending relevant legislation and regulations, we have put in place impoundment and disqualification penalty on drivers and vehicles. And for reconviction, they're subject to more serious penalty. If the regulatory regime can come into operation upon Gazette on the 3rd of August 2026, we will set out more clearly the disqualification penalty. After the subsidiary legislation come into operation, the court will be able to hand down the penalty in a clearer manner, because in the legislation we have set out the disqualification period for drivers who carry passengers for reward illegally. The minimum disqualification period should be 12 months, and it can go as long as 3 years. This is how we enhance deterrent effect. Thank you. Mr. Adrian Ho. Thank you, Chairman. I thank the SAR government for their efforts over the past year. We have been discussing illegal online ride-hailing for some 10 years' time. I think that the people are the ones to win. In the future, the quality for personalized point-to-point transport service will definitely be improved when the regulatory regime come into effect. I have a few questions for the Secretary. The administration said that by the end of November this year, they are going to grant ride-hailing service license. By 22nd of August 2027, we need to make sure that the platforms will obtain a relevant license. And in the meantime, the platforms will commence their preparatory work. I have questions regarding whether or not the government will step up enforcement during these 9 months' time. Many people say that illegal drivers or platforms will try their best to work the most hours during these 9 months before the licenses are being granted. I wonder if the government will strengthen enforcement efforts during these 9 months. Will they step up a due diligence against platforms? Second, if the platform violates the owner-driver requirement, then they will be subject to a fine of level 3, that is $10,000. Will the government increase the fine? Is that deterrent enough? I don't think that the level of fine is deterrent enough. That's it for my questions for now. Thank you. Secretary. Thank you for your questions. As I responded to Mr. Chan Xiu-hong, I said that I understand that people are concerned about the existing illegal carriage of passengers for reward that exists currently. The government will take enforcement action against these illegal activities. The existing fines and penalties, as well as enforcement arrangement, will persist. Take last year and the first half of this year as an example. The police have been taking enforcement action. I believe that the Transport Department will further educate the members of the public and passengers. We hope to start issuing ride-hailing service license at the end of November this year. Licensed platforms will need to recruit drivers and vehicles with permits, and it takes time. We allow the licensed platforms 9 months' time to complete the preparatory work, and that's a tight schedule because they need to apply for driver. They need their drivers to apply for driver permit and vehicle permits, and also the relevant drivers need to sit for the combined test. This will take at least 1 to 2 months or even 3 months. But as long as the licensed platform have the drivers and the vehicles, then the Transport Department will be able to establish a database for the platforms to match with drivers and vehicles. The Transport Department will also enforce licensing conditions by then. Second, you asked about the penalties. For violation of owner-driver requirement, if the drivers fail to conduct due diligence, the penalty is pitched at level 3, that is $10,000. The licensed platform will also have to comply with all the licensing conditions, and that's within our regulatory framework. The Commissioner for Transport can hold hearings against these platforms. Depending on the nature of the violation, the Commissioner can impose other penalties as well. The Commissioner may vary, suspend, or disqualify the licensed platform. We have many different conditions bounding the platforms. Thank you. Next, Mr. Jimmy Ng. Thank you, Chairman. After the applicants passed the combined test, then they can drive either taxis or ride-hailing vehicles. In order to increase our capacity of point-to-point transport service, can the ride-hailing vehicle drivers hold both taxi and ride-hailing service permits if they have sat through the pre-service training for both ride-hailing service and taxis? What is the definition of platform? The most simple way to define it is that there is a platform that is online within mobile application where drivers can register and people can call or book vehicles to go from point A to point B, and then there will be a fare popping up. There are some map applications that offer information to people looking for directions. Are these paid applications or map applications regulated by the government? If yes, why? Because they're only offering information. Third, on capacity. Some drivers offer service on a part-time basis. They may, well, the peak hours also vary. It could be during the in the morning or when students get off school. Can drivers only offer service for 1 to 2 hours a day or offer service during weekend? Should we not impose such a requirement of working 30 odd hours a week so that more drivers can register?
Secretary, I will take the two last questions and then we'll defer to the Commissioner. Now, how do we define a ride-hailing platform? Now, we have had a very in-depth debate during the Bills Committee for the bill last year. Now, according to the LegCo Council brief, we sought to cover all e-platforms as well as telecommunications platform providing ride-hailing platform services. Now, the service scope includes accepting hail through the platform as well as arranging for appropriate vehicles or drivers to accept the fare. So they would both accept online ride booking as well as making arrangements for meeting these demands. So in the mainland and other places, there are some composite platforms. For example, they provide map services or other information. They do not arrange for the drivers and vehicles directly, but rather they do so through other intermediaries. In Hong Kong, our position is clear. We attach the highest importance to passenger safety, and also there is due diligence condition to ensure the owner-driver's condition is met. So no matter whether the service scope of the platform is in full or in part, they still have to apply for the ride-hailing platform license, as well as comply with the due diligence condition. Now, of course, their service scope may vary. In the future, concerning the different nature of the service, we can prescribe the service scope clearly on the license. Now, we have been communicating with different platforms, and we have made our positions clear to the companies. Of course, we would like to attract more operators to come to Hong Kong, but we have to be sure that they comply with the due diligence requirements. Now, concerning drivers, most of them are part-time drivers. So can we issue permits with different working hours? Now, this is a suggestion made by many. However, in actual operation, we can't foresee the work schedule of each driver being granted a permit in the future. So if we specify the working period or work hours of drivers, that may affect the number of applications further. So as a prudent approach, we don't incline to make the matter more complicated. I will defer to the Commissioner for Transport for the third question. Thank you. Now, about the new combined written test, it will be valid for 3 years. After taking the combined exam, a candidate may choose to take the pre-service course for ride-hailing drivers if they want to become a ride-hailing drivers. In the next few years, if they want to become a taxi driver, they can take the pre-service course for taxi drivers. Thank you. In other words, if they have become a taxi driver, they can drive both kinds of vehicles. Yes. Mr. Mark Chong. Thank you, Chairman. I have 6 to 7 questions, so I will leave some for the second round, maybe. So my first question is about the implementation timetable. According to the Secretary, starting from August, you will send out invitation to platforms, and then drivers can take the examination and apply for vehicle permits. So by November, after the platform licenses have been issued, we will have the first compliant vehicle providing service on the streets. So I don't follow why we need a 9-month transitional period. We are already scrutinizing all the details, so all the interested parties are preparing themselves to apply for the permits or license. So after the 9-month period, that is by the 22nd of August 2027, there will be the following scenario. If I call a ride on the platform, I would not know whether that is a compliant vehicle or not. So should I go on board? Is there insurance coverage? So I would stay away from online ride hailing during this 9-month transitional period. So I think you should draw a line that after the regulatory system is implemented, there should be no more non-compliant ride-hailing vehicles on the street. Now, about the number of permits, I support the number of 10,000. Now, 2 years ago, when we did not have the principal ordinance, that is, we didn't have the owner-driver requirements. According to the Transport Department, the taxi trade accounts for 80% and the ride-hailing industry accounts for 20% of the capacity. So we thought we needed some 18,000 ride-hailing vehicles to meet the demand. However, as a start, 10,000 is good. So the core issue is how we conduct the dynamic assessment. I'm worried that the assessment itself is dynamic, but the issuance of license itself is static. Especially in the initial month, you have to react swiftly. Otherwise, the regulatory regime may fail. So this is a negative vetting procedure. So in theory, if the commissioner considers that the number is inadequate, she can publish a notice tomorrow and increase the number to 5,000 and have us scrutinize the decision. Is that feasible in theory? If it is so dynamic, can that be done? And then another question is about the license or permits issuing mechanism. Now, the commissioner can extend invitation to designated description of persons or vehicles, but I support drawing of lots. At most, you can draw lots for different types of vehicles, for example, 5-seaters or 7-seaters vehicle. There are views that the permit should be prioritized for drivers in existence. I object to that. That's technically feasible, but that's not legally plausible. How can we prioritize those who are working in the gray areas of the law right now? That will also gives rise to a situation that more people will rush to become ride-hailing drivers right now so as to get priority in getting a permit. That is punishing those drivers who are waiting until the system is in place and apply for a permit. So please listen to our views on that. So please save your questions for the second round. Secretary. Chairman, may I reply to the 4 questions because I see the clock is running off time. So allow me to share with you our thinking process and also our preparatory work. Now, it is expected that the Transport Department will extend invitation to platforms in August. And then the TD will issue the license by the end of November after vetting. Now, by then, we will require the platforms to comply with the conditions and set up a system as soon as possible and connect the platform with the TD's system. At the same time, in the fourth quarter this year, simultaneously, the Transport Department will invite applications from drivers and vehicles, and the permits will be issued in batches. So after platform license is issued, then the platforms will start recruiting and establishing the system. At the same time, there will be drivers holding the permits. The TD will establish a database and provide information on their website to facilitate recruitment of drivers by platforms. So the 9-month transitional period mentioned by Mr. Mark Chong, I understand we are eager to put the system in place, but we are actually working simultaneously. Some platforms may not jump and apply for a license right away, and they need time to share the data and also recruit drivers. So the timetable is actually tight. Now, from the public's point of view, would there be an issue that the public cannot distinguish whether the ride that answer their call is a permit-holding vehicle? Now, we have specified that vehicles with a permit should bear a mark issued by the Transport Department to facilitate law enforcement, as well as for identification by the public. Thirdly, dynamic assessment and adjustment. How will that work? First of all, we will be very flexible and dynamic. We will base our review on data, holistic data. And we have specified the number of permits to be issued through a Gazette notice. If we need to adjust the number, again, the mechanism will be through publishing a notice on the Gazette. In other words, negative vetting. So we look forward to interacting positively with the Legislative Council. When there is a clear need to adjust the number of permits, we will publish the notice on the Gazette and then consult the LegCo for scrutiny. Now, the fourth question. Permits or invitations may be issued through drawing of lots or selection in accordance with criteria specified by the Commissioner, or a combination of both. Now, Mr. Mark Chong's suggestion has been made by other platforms as well. Can we prioritize existing active drivers on their platforms? Now, our position is clear on this. We will send invitation to vehicles and drivers engaging in legal ride-hailing service. So, at present, provision of ride-hailing service through online platform is not legal. So, in reality, We would not like to encourage a large number of drivers without a vehicle to buy a vehicle and get priority in getting a permit. In any event, we will listen to society's views to find the best combination, so that when we send out invitation for the 10,000 permits, we can ensure that there is adequate capacity and that the drivers are really in the mind of provision of service.
多謝主席。
Mr. Lothar Lam. Thank you, Chairman. Now we're setting the details for regulation of ride-hailing service. After listening to the various industry, the government proposed to issue 10,000 vehicle permits. I hope that when the government conducts dynamic analysis, they will not only have regard to the demand of passengers, but also the operation and income of the taxi trade. I have a few questions. First, on insurance, just now Mr. Champulan put some similar questions. According to existing regulation, owners of taxi need to take out third-party insurance. The premium is not low. In order to ensure fairness, will the government mandate owners of ride-hailing vehicles take out insurance on their own instead of having the platform operator to take out insurance holistically for everyone? Second, it is said that the government may accord priority to owners of private vehicles. Will the government set a 3-year limit so that there will not be any drivers who purchase new vehicles just to join the ride-hailing trade? Third, the taxi trade worried if there will be platforms in order to compete for business offer huge subsidy for passengers. This will create unfairness to the taxi trade. The government last year said that they reserve the power to set the price and fares for ride-hailing. Why the government not mandate the platform operators to set their fares as a level higher than that of taxi to ensure fairness? Fourth, although there is a cap of 10,000 permits for vehicles, but during peak hours, taxis and ride-hailing vehicles compete for business. How will the government ensure that there will not be vicious competition? Will we restrict the online time for ride-hailing drivers? Thank you, Chairman. Secretary. In the existing legislation, we ask the ride-hailing vehicles to take out a third-party insurance. We do not restrict the manner in which the vehicles should be insured. When necessary, in the licensing conditions, we can set out the relevant requirements. Second, taxi trade gave us some suggestions. They said that when we invite owners of vehicles to register, we may want to set a time period for which the owners have owned their cars. However, when we formulate the regime, we have regards to a holistic host of factors, including the carrying capacity of roads, the ecosystem of public transport system, so on and so forth. We don't just listen to a single sector or industry. But we understand that with the development of online ride-hailing service, there may be people who want to try out their luck in buying new vehicles to join the ride-hailing trade. If there are more too many people purchasing vehicles just to join the trade, then that is in contravention to our goal in controlling the growth of private vehicles, and we also have to take into consideration the carrying capacity of our roads. In our in our proposal, we already said that the Commissioner for Transport will have the power to specify the mode on which we invite drivers to join the regime. We may have give priority to drivers who have owned their cars for a certain period of time. The trade proposed the period to be 3 years. We will have regards to the host of factors before we make a decision. The ultimate goal is to strike a balance. Third, Mr. Lothar asked us to mandate the platform operators to offer a fare at a level higher than the taxi trade. Well, the SAR government implement or propose this regime in order to have an overall control on the number of ride-hailing vehicles. Currently, there is a rather large platform operators that is offering service illegally. Hopefully, with the regulatory regime, we want people to be able to enjoy a service that is of the same level as it is now. Fourth, so that as a result, we're not going to set an indicator for fares. Fourth, the member asked if we're going to restrict the time when the online ride hailing vehicle drivers can come online. Well, I believe that through diversified service, we will be able to enhance the service quality of point-to-point transport. The taxi trade recently have been upgrading and transforming with the assistance of the Transport Department. I believe that by this, taxi trade will be able to offer service that meets the needs of passengers and travelers every day during peak and non-peak hours. And hopefully everyone's livelihood can be improved. Mr. Eric Yim. Thank you, Chairman. Hong Kong is an international metropolis. Through this regulatory regime, we are legalizing the ride-hailing platform operator that have been doing business for almost a decade. As a Legislative Council member, I didn't dare to use the online ride-hailing service because it was illegal. I have a few questions. Just now, Mr. Lothar asked whether the government will restrict platform operators from offering discounts. The administration said that they will not roll out such a restrictions because currently we don't have a cap on the number of vehicles registered with the platform. In the future, after the platform operators have obtained a license, they can offer discounts to attract more users. As a member of the public, discounts is attractive. For platform operators that are more competitive, they may offer heavy discounts to push out other competitors, and that may heavily impact the taxi trade. And I think that when this happens, the administration needs to intervene. Second, drivers who want to register permits need to own a vehicle. Just now, some members proposed that drivers who already or applicants who already own a car for a period of time may be accorded priority because they have experience. There are some people who want to join the trade. And if we accord priority to people who have already owned a car, then people who want to join the business, people who don't already own a car who want to join the business may be treated unfairly. I think that we need to be more flexible. We should also allow people who don't already own a car to join, because sometimes some drivers who are experienced may be driving trucks owned by their employers. I think that we should issue a permit to experienced drivers who have been working, say, as a professional driver for 10 years' time. Third, when there are drivers who have been disqualified, I think that we need to allow applicants on the wait list to work. Secretary, thank you. I have to clarify a point that you made. According to the piece of legislation we passed last year, eligible owner and drivers, when they file applications, they need to have already owned a car and possess the vehicle license. This is to make sure that they meet the owner vehicle requirement. Mr. Yim gave us some suggestions. We understand that at time we may need to make improvement to our regime. Second, on the point about fares and charges. Just now I responded to Mr. Olotherlam's question. We want the market to be competitive. We want passengers to have a choice. In the future, if there is inflation style competition in the trade, then the administration will intervene. We do have means to gatekeep, and we may propose new regulations. Mr. Jonathan Lampert. Thank you. My questions have been put by some other members. Now I'd like to raise a few points. In the Legal Notice 63, it is said that on average 120,000 journeys are being made every day. During the small hours when members of the public want to go to the hospitals, when there is no bus service available, then online ride-hailing service is very useful. I wonder how regularly the government will conduct analysis on their data so that they will adjust the 10,000 cap. In LN 61, paragraph 18, the government is going to introduce a minimum number of journey as the requirement for renewal of permits. There are some groups that want to disrupt the development of ride-hailing service trade, and they may ask their trade members to apply to become a drivers, and they may not provide service during their permit period. And those platforms may be penalized as a result. Interested platform operators need to invest heavily if they want to operate in Hong Kong. Sometimes the investment amount to some tens of millions of dollars. Now the license is only valid for 5 years. I hope that the government will establish an internal guidelines setting out the circumstances under which the government will adjust the license fees. This is how we can attract foreign companies to invest in Hong Kong.
Secretary, thank you, Captain Lam, for your questions. And concerning the types of data to be collected by the Transport Department, the Commissioner for Transport can specify the type of data to be submitted. Several types have been set out already, including the types and number of trips and journeys. We may also require data concerning the time of the day when the journeys were made. That will help us conduct the dynamic assessments. Now, you mentioned some opportunistic drivers, or those who are working as a syndicate to rig the lot drawing system for the permits, who then become zombie drivers who do not provide service. Now, the Commissioner has been empowered by our subsidiary legislation to set a requirement on the minimum number of journeys made. Now, we are now canvassing views on the number. If the number is too low, it's meaningless. If the number is too high, then that would go against the very nature of the job, that is a part-time job. So concerning opportunistic applicants who do not provide service after getting a permit, we will work that out with the platforms. And I think licensed platforms have the incentives to encourage the drivers registered with their platform to actually provide ride-hailing services so that the platform can meet its service pledge. Another question about the fee. Now, in the subsidiary legislation, we have set out the license fees for the platform. Now, that allows us to adjust the license fee level flexibly in the future. We have made reference to other places as well. Now, the license fee is higher than the cost recovery level, but it's not unreasonable. We can still attract potential companies to apply for the license. Mr. Lam Wai Kong, thank you. I support the government to regulate the ride-hailing service to enhance the industry as a whole, as well as enhancing the traveling experience of passengers. That will also ensure a reasonable remuneration for professional drivers. Now, when the government sets the maximum number of vehicle permits as 10,000, many taxi drivers are worried that their income would be hurt. So I urge the government to be prudent in the dynamic assessments and adjustment process. In particular, you should consider whether the adjustment would lead to a significant drop in taxi drivers' income. And then I have some questions. Some members have also mentioned that in terms of law enforcement, there are two material dates. And there will be a 9-month-long transitional period. Now, for law-complying drivers, including taxi drivers as well as drivers with a permit in the future, we want to know, can passengers be sure that all vehicles and drivers operating on the platform will become law compliant during the transitional period? In terms of due diligence, if it is found that some platforms have failed in the due diligence requirements, the government will become more stringent on enforcing the law. Now, some members are worried about the capacity in the point-to-point service industry. According to the government, there are already some 210,000 taxi drivers who are experienced in providing point-to-point transport service. So on top of the 10,000 vehicle permits, can we provide a channel for taxi drivers to switch track and become ride-hailing vehicle drivers? What they need is just a private car. Now, I know the government wants to prevent overloading the road network. Now, can we allow taxi drivers to use a non-newly registered private car to provide ride-hailing service? And I know there will be a registration mark for vehicles with a permit. So besides that identification mark, will there be a different design for the vehicle plate or registration mark as well? So unlike the usual yellow car plate, can we have another design for vehicles providing ride-hailing service? Thank you, Mr. Lam. Your questions are from the perspective of the taxi trade, mainly. So with the implementation of this regulatory framework, I think we can attract more drivers to join. In the future, we will be communicating with the trade as well as the association to attract more drivers to join the industry. Now, since taxi drivers have received the 8-hour pre-service course as well as the written test, which has covered ride-hailing service as well, they can simply apply to the transport departments to get a permit. However, we exert control on the overall number. So in terms of the 10,000 vehicle permits, we will have our own allocation system. We understand that some taxi drivers would like to become ride-hailing drivers as well. At the same time, we have to consider the additional load on the network. So in the law, we have specified that all applicants must already be a vehicle owner, and that's the vehicle has a valid vehicle license. So I would like to urge taxi drivers who would like to apply for a ride-hailing driver's permit, they may consider whether they need to buy a car to provide this service. At the same time, the taxi trade is also upgrading and transforming their service. So we hope through the combined written test, we can attract more young people to join the taxi industry as well. Through taxis, they can also provide service through the online ride-hailing platform, as well as other channels. That will open up more options for taxi drivers to accept fares. So the TD has been collecting the operational situation of the taxi trade as well. So considering the supply and demand situation of the point-to-point transport service as a whole, we will continue to gather information from the taxi trade. Now about the identification mark, it will be a requirement in the future. So we incline to require vehicles to put up a clearly visible marking on the front and rear windscreens of the vehicles. so the law enforcement agencies and members of the public can clearly see them. And whether we should make the registration mark of those vehicles of a different color. Now, considering that ride-hailing vehicles are also private cars for personal use as well, if the registration mark are of a different color, it may cause confusion as to whether the vehicle is now providing service. On the other hand, the vehicle certificates for ride-hailing service can be put on and removed when the car is in use for ride-hailing service. Mr. Jonathan Leung, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm not a member of this subcommittee. Now, riding on the previous question about the vehicle certificates and the marking, understand that there will be marking on the front and rear windscreens. Well, that may be visible during daytime, but not at nighttime. They may be barely visible at night. Now, we have a lot of magnetic stickers on cars nowadays, which can be affixed to the body of the cars. And also, some of them are made of reflective materials, which can be clearly seen at night. So can we make that requirements to make the marks more visible? Now, the passengers must clearly know whether the vehicle is with a permit, because there will be insurance coverage. And without clear marking, it will be very hard for the police to enforce the law. Now, for the taxi drivers, there is a points reduction system. That's a bit hard to introduce this arrangement for ride-hailing drivers. Of course, there are ratings. They may be given 1 star if their service is poor. But we only have 10,000 permits now. If the service quality is low, then they may get 1 star, and then they may migrate to other platforms. There are lots of platforms available. Since there are only limited number of drivers, then it would affect the overall quality of the service. So can we consider cancelling the permits of drivers with poor performance and hand the permits over to better drivers? Thank you. Now, concerning the law enforcement as well as the quality of service, I will defer to the Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Leung, for your suggestions. We're now designing the vehicle certificates marking concerning the design and the size. At least it will be of the same size of the P marking at present. That's the requirements for the P mark at present. And also we will take into account Mr. Jonathan Leung's views concerning the visibility of the marking at night. Now, among the data we require from the platform, number of complaints, the nature of complaints is important. It's not just about the rating system designed by the platform themselves, 1 star or 5 stars. We will require more details than that. Now, initial design is we will require the platform to provide us with the number of complaints received by the drivers as well as the nature of complaints as well. That includes service attitude as well as the fare level. Now, the fares are booked through the online platform, so there will be a predestined routes and price. So if the drivers deliberately take a longer route, that would also be a cause for complaints. And also the condition of the vehicle. If it is very dirty and messy, it can also be cause for complaints. Now, besides, we will also consider whether the complaints are substantiated or not. We will confirm it with the platform too. So with this information, we can conduct a comprehensive assessment on the service quality of the driver, so as to ensure healthy growth for the industry. Thank you.
Mr. Andrew Lam. Thank you, Chairman, for allowing non-subcommittee members to put questions here. I have been following up on this issue for a long time. I understand that the administration attaches a lot of importance to the ecosystem of the personalized point-to-point transport services. The government is trying to strike a balance between the interest of the personalized point-to-point transport services and the taxi trade, and I know that this is a difficult task. The Secretary said multiple times that the point-to-point transport service is of a complementary nature. The drivers work on a part-time basis. Comparing to taxis, the entry threshold for becoming a ride-hailing vehicle driver is 0. What is the operational cost or operating cost of being a ride-hailing drivers? I think that the most expensive item is insurance. When a regulatory regime come into operation, the ride-hailing vehicle driver will not be restricted in terms of the locations where they can operate, but there is a location restrictions for taxis. I think that the government need to adopt a dynamic approach in assessing the data. Will more and more ride-hailing vehicle drivers go full-time? If the entry threshold and operating costs are low, then we may be encouraging more people to join the trade. We are not restricting the platform operators from offering subsidy to their drivers or even discounts to their passengers. I hope that the government will monitor the market more closely. We need to look at whether the platforms will try to adopt extreme means to push out their competitors. There are some platforms that are not registered in Hong Kong that offer white license vehicles. I hope that the government will spare more efforts to combat these platforms. Secretary, I thank Mr. Lam for offering his support. We want to control the overall number of vehicle permits. We want to adhere to the principles of complementary coexistence, positive competition, overall control, dynamic assessment. As we prepare for the regulatory regime, we understand that it's difficult for us to strike a balance. This may be a difficult task, but by adhering to the 3 major policy objectives of people-oriented, safe regulation, complementary coexistence, positive competition, overall control, and dynamic assessment, we want to design our regime in a more comprehensive manner. Most of the ride-hailing vehicle drivers now work on a part-time basis. In the future, are they going to go full-time? It's difficult for us to give you an estimate accurately. We believe that there will be changes in supply and demand in the future. There will be a compliance cost in the future for the drivers. Currently, drivers don't have to pay anything. In the future, they need to obtain a permit, and they need to take out insurance. They have to meet the eligibility requirement. This is to ensure safe commute of the people. We're not trying to change the operational model. We're not trying to drive part-time drivers to go full-time by putting in place some compliance requirements. Is there monopoly in the ride-hailing service trade? Well, over the past 10-odd years, the situation is not ideal. We see a single platform operating in a legal vacuum. With the regulatory regime, we're very confident that we will be able to attract more than 1 or 2 or 3 or even more platform operators to join. If more local, mainland, overseas platforms apply for a license, then we will be able to create a more diversified and fair environment, and this is conducive to the healthy development of our point-to-point transport service. Mr. Yu Ming, thank you. I thank the Secretary and her team. We need a strong determination for any kind of reform, especially when we're talking about this personalized point-to-point transport service. I think that this term of the government is determined to take the next step. In our neighboring cities, they have a regime on point-to-point transport service. We are now already lagging behind. Information technology is driving changes, and now our mode of commute have also changed. I thank the administration for overcoming barriers and coming up with this regime. I have a few suggestions. First, on identification. Let me show you this. In Shanghai, in the rear windscreen of vehicles, drivers will have to display QR code showing that they're ride-hailing vehicles. They have to display the QR code so that the people can scan it, and there is also a hotline available so that people can call the regulators. I think that this will allow passengers to differentiate which vehicles is offering ride-hailing service. With the QR code, people will be able to tell why a vehicle is parked at a certain place. For example, it could be because they are dropping off passengers. I know that the taxi drivers are now required to install CCTVs in their vehicles with audio recording functions. Should we not ask the ride-hailing vehicles to also install dash cam? Thank you. Secretary. Now on identification marking. After the meeting, the Transport Department will be happy to continue to talk to the members as to what materials we should use to make the identification marking. The TD's colleagues have been trying to look at other places we have some preliminary ideas that is very much similar to what was proposed by the member. Now, on the mode of display and the materials of the marking, we're happy to take on suggestions from the members so that we can make it easier for members of the public to collect information and identify ride-hailing vehicles. Second, ride-hailing vehicles can only take bookings online. They are installed with GPS so that the platform operators can locate where their vehicles are and so that they can monitor the route they take. I believe that the platform operators and vehicles registered with them will work together. Second, on a dash cam, I know that the Transport Department is looking into whether we should include in the licensing conditions that vehicles will need to install dash cam with the platform operators. And this will also allow the operators to better monitor their vehicles and drivers. Should there be CCTVs, cameras inside the vehicle compartment? Well, we need to be careful about that. I remember when we scrutinized the principal ordinance, there were members who made such a suggestion. Well, because the ride-hailing vehicles is also used as a private car, the drivers may carry their family members with the car. If we mandate the installation of a camera or CCTV in the vehicle compartment, that may undermine the privacy of the drivers. There are different ways, different measures to meet our goals. Thank you. There are still 3 more members who would like to speak for the first round and 2 more members who would like to speak for the second round. I don't think that we have time for the second round. Maybe we need to leave that for this next meeting. I will extend the meeting by 15 minutes so that everyone can put their questions at least once. Mr. Lee Kan-cheng. Thank you. I thank the administration. I have received many questions from taxi drivers and ride-hailing vehicle drivers. Now, on the question about, or on the issue about installing CCTV or cameras inside the vehicle compartment, on the mainland, many of the ride-hailing vehicles are not installed with cameras, but on the application, there is an option for riders or families of the riders to turn on the audio recording functions. There are many functions that can be included in the ride-hailing applications. Say, for example, calling the police functions to allow the passengers to reach out to the platform operators, so on and so forth. Second, maybe we should allow the ride-hailing vehicle drivers to turn off the camera when they use it for their personal purpose. We need to safeguard the interest of the passengers. Second, on vetting the eligibility of the applicant drivers. Are the platform operators the one to vet the drivers or the government? Some drivers may have their points deducted. Well, some drivers may have almost all their points deducted. They may have violated many traffic or offenses. Should we continue to allow them to be registered with a platform to offer ride-hailing service? Will the ride-hailing vehicle drivers need to obtain a business registration in order to offer service? Lastly, will these ride-hailing vehicle drivers be able to obtain permits under the northbound travel for Hong Kong vehicles so that they can offer service in a cross-boundary manner? I think that by installing GPS, we can wean out such situation, are we going to suspend the platform license if they offer service illegally? Thank you.
I think you're referring to the scheme for Hong Kong vehicles to go north, the northbound scheme. Secretary, thank you. In terms of dashcam and video recordings, we have to be very careful because it involves personal privacy. Even if there are functions to switch off the camera during personal use of vehicle, it is still sensitive. Now we will require the platforms to connect their system with the Transport Department system and provide us with information, including complaints. And there will be due diligence requirements imposed on the platforms. Unlike the taxi industry, there is no way to collect data from taxis individually. Now, when we passed the principal ordinance last year, we have set a series of eligibility thresholds for ride-hailing drivers that include rendering drivers ineligible for the permits if they have committed serious traffic offences. The Transport Department will consider establishing a database to update on the law compliance situation of drivers so that the platforms can easily find out whether the drivers providing service on the platforms are eligible. And concerning tax arrangements and business registration, during the stage of the principal ordinance, we have explored this matter, where we have requested platforms to be incorporated and keep proper records, including their financial situation and their annual returns. And under the existing laws, there are already requirements for businesses. So in the future, the Inland Revenue Departments and the Business Registry will enforce the law on these matters. Ms. Christine Fong. Thank you, Chairman. Now we are taking it step by step, and we are setting the initial number of vehicle permits at 10,000. This is a decision after a long thinking process. And concerning the accidents in the trade as well as concerning the availability of cars for passengers, I think we should take a small step first. 10,000 is a step towards the right direction. Now I have a question. I agree that we need to enhance the facial recognition function, or at least a QR code. Now, the Secretary mentioned the challenges in terms of personal privacy. Now, for the taxi license, there is a license displayed on the front of the car with a photo. Now, many passengers do not book the ride themselves. The family members help them to book a ride for them to travel on. So they need some measures to verify the identity of the drivers themselves, for example, a photo or a QR code. Now, dashcam is a requirement for taxis, so why not ride-hailing vehicles? I think with AI, we can overcome the challenges. The ride-hailing vehicles, ride-hailing drivers have a choice. Since they choose to use their personal vehicle to offer service, then this is a burden they need to take. Now, if I'm taking a passenger across the border, and when I cross the border, I claim that this is my friend, that would be illegal. So how can we prevent such illegal operation. Now, I support the idea of an 8-hour-long pre-service course. So can we extend the coverage? Now, I have suggested establishing a fund like the one in Australia to provide pre-service training and also insurance support to support ride-hailing drivers. So can we consider establishing a fund for both the taxi and the ride-hailing trade? Now, the Transport Department has set aside $60 million to establish a database for journey recording system. So can we extend that to ride-hailing vehicles as well? Secretary, I thank Ms. Fong for her questions. Now, I would like to emphasize our policy is that the drivers must be the owners of the cars. So in the future, we will require the platforms to make use of technologies to ensure that the cars and drivers are law complying. So we will urge the platform to make use of technologies, including facial recognition technologies. Now, very often in the mainland, after booking a ride, a confirmation notice would be sent to the passenger with the car plate number as well as the driving license number of the driver with a photo. So similar technology can help ensure that the requirements of owner-driver is being complied with. About QR code, we will require the owner-driver to display an identification mark. Now, another member suggested to include a QR code on the identification mark to let the passenger have access to the information of the car and the driver. We will consider that. Now, Mr. Michael Lee, as well as Ms. Fong, have mentioned the same point. If drivers with a permit provide service illegally, for example, providing service in closed area or even across the border, well, that is a breach of the permit's condition. It means that the platform has failed to perform its due diligence properly as well. So both the driver and the platform will be punished. All services must be lawful. There will be strict law enforcement. So we will work with the police to conduct spot checks. Now, finally, on support for drivers. At present, we will not consider charging a fee and then establish a fund. Despite that, we will continue to gauge the needs of drivers in the point-to-point transport service trade. In the future, if they need to upgrade and transform and make use of more technologies, we may consider providing some form of support for them in terms of resources or policies. I will extend the meeting by 5 minutes more. I'm the last person to speak. Now, today, many members have asked questions from myriads of angles. So I acknowledge this is a difficult balance. No matter what the number is, the objective is to ensure that we are taking steady steps forward. Now, many stakeholders are worried about the strong impact on their business. if the number is too high. So 10,000 is a good start. Now, I hope that after the allocation exercise, the permits would be issued batches by batches, with data being collected all along. Now, at present, there is zero protection for the passengers. When transport service is being provided illegally, so it is important for passengers to know that the vehicles that they are riding in has a permit. Now, just a sticker on the window may not be sufficient, so magnetic plates may be an option. Please consider that. Now, I'm concerned about 2 points as well. First of all, law enforcement. Now, at present, there is not a legal channel to provide online ride-hailing service. So some people may be breaking the law out of good intent to serve the public. Now, when there is a legal system, it may cause competition to those drivers providing illegal passenger carrying service for a reward. So both taxi drivers and those illegal drivers may be protesting against the system. So I think law enforcement is very important. There must be better arrangement in terms of patrol and inspection to ensure that law-abiding drivers are being protected from unfair competition. Now, at present, some platforms are operating beyond the realm of law. So after the passage of the law, there will be law enforcement. But how can we be sure that illegal passenger carrying services are not provided across the border? We have to prevent those who benefit from the loopholes. Thank you. In the future, taxi drivers as well as drivers with a ride-hailing permit would definitely want to see harder action being taken against drivers still providing illegal ride-hailing services, and we will not tolerate any law-breaking activities. So we will work with the police to enhance law enforcement together with publicity and education. Now, about operating a platform without a license. Any unlicensed platform is against the law. Even if the operator is located outside of Hong Kong, it is still illegal. If we can establish that platforms are operating online rail-hailing services without a license, since there will be no gray area anymore, we will actively communicate with the online app store operators and internet service providers to remove the illegal apps from the app store. Now, through the multi-pronged approach in law enforcement, these unlicensed platforms will have a hard time recruiting drivers to register with their platform, which will diminish their operation. So this comprehensive regulatory system can ensure that there is better effect for our law enforcement measures.
There are still 2 more members who would like to speak for the second round, but time is almost up. The next meeting will be held tomorrow afternoon. In order for the subcommittee to have ample time to scrutinize the 4 pieces of subsidiary legislation and so that we can report to the House Committee, on the 15th of July, 2026, I'm going to move a motion extending the scrutiny period of the 4 pieces of subsidiary legislation to the 15th of July. From 3:30 to 5:30 on the 9th of June, we're going to host the next meeting. For other information, I will inform the members in due course. Thank you very much.